Bibliophiles of the internet, my name's Adriana, and today I'm here to talk about my favorite books that I read in 2017. If you're new here, I've been doing my best of the year videos in this fashion pretty much since I started on BookTube. First of all, I don't choose between my favorites. Today I'm going to mention every single one of my favorite books that I read in 2017 because I don't like making choices. Secondly, this list is not ranked in any way. I'm simply going to go through all the best books I read this year in chronological order, first to last. And thirdly, I will not be including synopses. I won't be pinpointing my favorite craft elements or anything like that. I just prefer to sum up my personal takeaway from each book in a sentence or two. First, we have The Summer Palace by C.S. Beckett. Because nothing can ever truly wash away the past, but acknowledging it, looking it in the eye, is the surest path to healing and forgiveness, which is where we thrive. The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. Because we give ourselves every reason to deny the simple pleasures in life, but just because our lives are governed by forces beyond our control doesn't mean we have to let the world tell us what's worth caring about. If something matters to you, it matters. The Girl Who Soared Over Fairyland and Cut the Moon in Two by Catherine M. Valente. Because being an adult and growing up doesn't mean you stop believing in something bigger than yourself. Everyday Sexism by Laura Bates. Because cynicism and complacency are easy, it's time we acknowledge that no hurt is too big or too small or too normal, and we need to focus our concern and turn it into effort. Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson. Because there's only so much you can be expected to bear by yourself. It's important to let go of those moments you keep locked up inside, to put them into words, to let those experiences outside in the world where others can see them and pick them up for you. The Abyss Surrounds Us by Emily Skrutsky. Because the worth of our lives is not measured by how much or how well we can destroy, but in the ways we find to unskew the system, the effort we put towards restoring or regaining balance. Furthermore by Tahera Mafi. Because in a world that is not generous, a world that does not forgive, to try something new, to be determined to forge your own path is the truest way to honor yourself. Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. Because in a society that demands and expects you to minimize yourself and your truth, the moment you start to believe that your life is in fact secondary is the moment you are conquered. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. Because the public sphere remains a volatile and unsafe place for people of color especially, and while it will be easy to withdraw into ourselves in favor of silence, which means safety, it's time we realized what can no longer go unsaid. Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Because when you're a woman, when you're perceived to be feminine, no choice you make is a good enough choice, so you may as well realize that the only one you're beholden to is yourself. Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire. Because sometimes the most impossible thing to grant others is the opportunity to choose for themselves. Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Because hate and bloodshed cannot drive out hate. More war cannot put an end to war or lay to rest old hurts. The greatest continuous challenge of personhood is finding new ways to avoid breeding the pain and contempt we've inherited anew. The Sorcerer of the Wildeeps by Kai Ashante Wilson. Because the true test of power lies not in deciding who we can hurt or destroy, but who we feel compelled to save. Raven's Stratagem by Yoon Ha Lee. Because grouping others as a collective makes them that much easier to dismiss. The greater, more terrifying challenge is to recognize the pieces of the machine as individuals. Not Your Sidekick by C.B. Lee. Because we only assign history meaning over time, and those with the power choose which narrative is told, who is cast as hero or villain, and if no one steps up to contest it, who's to say it's not legitimate? I Believe in a Thing Called Love by Maureen Gu. Because love is a constant risk, a game with no guarantees. You don't get to choose who or how you love, but you do get to choose how much you fight to keep those you love. The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Because it will always be worth the risk to try and be more and know more than the box you were born into. It will always be worth it to understand where others are coming from, to prioritize cooperation, and to venture outside of yourself. A Crown of Wishes by Roshni Chokshi. Because it's important to realize that not being able to do something alone is not a weakness. The Journey to Dragon Island by Claire Fayers. Because absolutely everything changes, anything incapable of change is dead where it stands. We may not always know the best way to meet change, but a good first step is trying to accept it. Brave by Svetlana Chmakova. Because nothing is ever just the way it is. Things are the way they are now because things change, because people implement change, and we have to keep demanding the changes we want to see so that everyone feels valued and knows they have a place. The Shadowed Sun by N.K. Jemisin. Because we do ourselves a disservice when we blindly fall into the way things have always been done, when we adhere to rules or expectations that were not created with us in mind in the first place. The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. Because an important landmark in loving someone is recognizing the ways you might be failing them, to ask them how you can be of better help. The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. Because the institutions that make up our lives were built to fail, were built on the backs of people positioned as lesser and expendable, were built with the suffering of those people integrated into the very fabric of our society as the norm, and when it comes to that, the only appropriate and effective response is to be furious. Signal to Noise by SILVIA Moreno Garcia. Because discovering the limits of what you can do and surpassing those limits is always a risk, a shot in the dark, but the willingness to lose everything, to empty yourself, opens up the possibility of gaining something greater in the process. When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie McLemore. Because we grow up believing that we have to separate or differentiate between all the different parts of ourselves, that it's necessary to make difficult aspects of ourselves small, when in reality it's all these things in conversation with each other that make us beautiful and complete. Avatar: The Last Airbender: The Promise by Jean Luen Yang. Because it's easy to deflect accountability at every turn, especially with all the ways things can go wrong, but part of growing up is embracing the terrifying opportunity to choose and to ready yourself to meet the consequences of that choice. Boku no Hero Academia by Horikoshi Kohei. Because strength isn't actually measured by physical power. It's a willingness to acknowledge that you still have room to grow. It's making the choice to do good and be good every single day, no matter what form that choice takes. The Gods of Tango by Carolina de Robertes. Because sometimes the matter of who you are is not self-evident. Sometimes you only gain a better definition of yourself by realizing what you're not, bumping up against the limits of what you can no longer do, what you can no longer be, what you can't imagine for yourself no matter how hard you try. The How to Train Your Dragon series by Cressida Cowell. Because the differences others scorn us for or try to stamp out of us can be the very same things that allow us to make a difference. The Roundhouse by Louise Erdrich. Because part of evolving is confronting what we've become, what we've inherited without question, looking it square in the face and actively deciding to expect better from ourselves. Fence by Joanna the Mad and C.S. Pacat. Because what's third or fourth rate to you could be first rate to someone else, and it's important to recognize that sportsmanship is less about achieving success and more about being afforded the opportunity to succeed in the first place. Elmit by Fiona Mosley. Because forcefully inserting yourself into someone else's life, taking what you feel is owed to you, is perhaps the most common act of violence. Giant Days by Lissa Trayman and John Allison. Because shit happens to everyone and everyone has to find a way to deal with it, but in dealing with it, grace, dignity, and seriousness are not actually requirements. And finally, Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Because when the standard for humanity and personhood is perfection, we're making ourselves pawns in a losing game. It's time we allowed ourselves and others to be imperfect. So there you have it. Those are all my standouts from 2017. If any of these books also made the cut for your favorites list, let me know in the comments, and feel free to share any other memorable must-reads that you discovered in 2017. But that is everything I had for this Best of 2017 video today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye!